I think everybody can probably see me and hear me now. So what we're going to dig in today is a little bit into the email tool. It's going to be a purely functional session. It's not really going to get into the best designs or most ways to communicate with your constituency base. It's more about the actual physical act of creating and sending an email out of Bloomerang. So if you're looking for something more along those lines, this is probably not the right webinar for you, but I think there was a lot of people who asked for something a little more functional, so hopefully this will deliver on those needs. So there's a lot to this, and I want to try and hit some of, I think, the bigger areas of confusion maybe that we get, questions and support from that pertains to email. And I think the biggest thing that we hear the most is you're sending an email out and you're not sure why certain people aren't appearing in the email. So it may be something with the filters that you haven't quite filtered correctly, but in most cases we've seen it is because of subscription lists. And as I say those words, there's probably some groans that I can't hear, but the subscription lists have been a problem for some people, and I think this is a good platform for some of you who maybe have not run into this yet to understand how and what subscription lists are and how they're used, okay? So if you're unfamiliar with subscription lists at all, let's just take a look at an account. Oops, can't spell my own name. There we go. And let's look at my profile. So subscription lists are going to appear on the profile. And let's go to the edit screen. They appear here. So you see them under communication preferences, subscription lists. And likely, if you're using these, your list looks different than mine. These are the ones, the values that come in as default for all Bloomerang users. Now, you can add to this list. It is in settings here. So if I go to settings and click view all settings, and then go to email, I can get in here, I can add subscription lists, new, and add to this list, okay? Now, the first thing I want to caution you on when adding subscription lists is that you make them as general and broad as possible. You do not want to have very specific subscription lists. The reason for that is going to be apparent in a moment. The reason for this mostly is that on the profile of an account, the subscription list field is not really intended for the users of the organization, so you folk, to actually go in and tag. While you can do it, you can go in here and tag someone with subscription lists. The actual sort of functionality is in reverse. It should be for them when they receive an email, for your recipients, when they receive an email, it gives them the option to opt out. Right? I'm sure you've all seen it when you received emails. So you get a little message at the bottom that says if you'd like to opt out of further communications from this sender, click here. Some of you may click there, some of you may have not. Different email programs work in different ways, but the way ours works is it doesn't just give you the option to opt out. It also gives you the option to stay opted in to certain types of emails. So this list are the options that they get. So if I go in here to this email that I sent out earlier, here you go. You've got your contact information. We'll talk about where this is pulled from in a moment. And then you have the unsubscribe from future mailings link. So let's click on that and see what happens. Okay, so there we go. I'm given the option. I can unsubscribe from all mailings. That's kind of a default, right? Or I can say, well, I don't want to unsubscribe from all mailings. I would like to still receive some different types of emails, and those emails are presented to them. So you don't want to do specific things like your 2013 gala follow-up as a value, as a subscription list, or your board member newsletter as a follow-up. Because if they see that in the list, they can check on it, and then essentially what happens is they get checked. In their profile, the subscription list will get tagged for that person who may have really absolutely no need to receive that type of email. So you want broad. So you send out a newsletter maybe every month. You send out acknowledgement emails maybe. You send out information about events. You send out information about volunteer information, right? It's very, very, very broad-minded types of things. So I'm not going to do anything. I'm not checking anything here. I'm going to just go ahead and cancel. But if they saved and I had checked those two things, on my profile here, they would be checked off. Okay, so let's cancel this. If I had chosen the unsubscribe from all mailings option instead of the other, this here would have been checked off, opted out of mass email. So that essentially is saying they don't want anything. No matter how you try to send an email to them, they won't receive it, okay, if this is checked off. So let's take a look at what happens then when you create an email. So I'm going to dovetail back into subscription list in a second, and it's going to make a little bit more sense. So when I go in here to my email home, here I have my existing templates. So I've got some things that maybe I sent out a few years ago, last month. I can go in here and I can edit an existing template. If I just want to make some minor changes to it, I can copy it and edit that one, edit the copy, or I can just go in here and send it. If I want to create a new one, I'm going to click here. All right. Next points where you might make a mistake. There's a possibility here. So you have 4 options here: newsletter, invitation, acknowledgement, and solicitation. At this time in Bloomerang, you are only given the option to filter by transaction fields when doing an acknowledgement email. These 3 types here, you will only be able to filter by constituent fields, so things that are stored on the profile, or the giving history filter. And those are the only types of fields you will be able to embed into the body of the letter are constituent fields. So think of this as a report. I'm sure everyone in the room has done a report before. You know how you choose a list? You can choose a constituent list, or you can choose a transaction list. Kind of think of it in the same terms. When you create a constituent list, you can't filter by transaction fields or report out on transaction fields. That's what these 3 are. They're like constituent lists. Now that may change down the road. We might give you other filters that help you pull in different information based on other timeline entries. But for now, we're really looking at the exact same options you would get when doing a constituent list report. The acknowledgement email, however, you get a little bit more. You get the transaction information. So it's like creating a transaction list report in Bloomerang. Okay? So let's go in here and let's start creating an acknowledgement email. So I'm going to select it. Now we've got to describe your email. We have to give it a name. So this might be an email that you send out, just like you do with letters. Maybe you have a weekly thank you letter. This might be the same thing with your emails. You might have like a weekly email acknowledgement, something like that. If you do, and it's something that you feel like you can go back to and use every week, then name it something descriptive of that fact. If it's very specific for maybe an appeal that's coming up or something, or an event invite, you'll probably want to name it descriptive of that event. So let's just call it our, we're going to do this, our daily thank you email. Now, what do you see here? You see subscription lists. Now, most people at this point, they're going to leave this blank. They're going to think, oh, well, I'm not going to check anything off here because I want anybody to be able to get this email. And that is almost perfect thinking. The problem is, if anybody has opted out, so you remember clicking here and choosing one of those 4 options, they're tagged with one of them. So what happens then, is that when I send this email out, if anybody in your database has been tagged with one of these values, and I don't tag the corresponding value on this template, they will not receive the email. It just will not happen. It'll act as if they're opted out. So that's where you get into trouble. You have people where you say, well, I want these people definitely should receive the weekly newsletter. So I'm going to tag them with the weekly newsletter, and that's the only subscription list I'm going to tag them with. So then when you send out an email that you want to go to everybody, they don't get it because you didn't tag a subscription list when you created the template. So there's a couple of thoughts here. What you could do is you could say, well, oh shoot, I've got a bunch of people tagged with subscription lists, but I want everyone to get it. you can go in here and just make sure you tag all of your subscription lists at this point. At that point, anybody tagged with any of those subscription lists and everybody else who's not tagged at all will receive it. The only people that won't receive the email at that point are those who have opted out completely, and of course those who don't have email addresses. All right? So in the case of an acknowledgement, that can get really tricky, because maybe you don't have people who have opted into a specific acknowledgement list, or they've opted out of everything except newsletter, but you still want to send them an email acknowledgement. You might consider to yourself, okay, I should probably maybe tag every subscription list so that they get my acknowledgement email. And then they might opt out again and opt out of acknowledgements too, and that's okay. But acknowledgement emails can be tricky because of your opt-outs. So at this point, I'm not going to tag anything. I'm just going to say, you know what, I'm going to send to anybody who's not opted out of anything. Actually, maybe I'll tag acknowledgement just in case I've had some people who have opted out and specifically said they still want to receive acknowledgements from me. Okay. Next thing you have to do is put your subject line in. If you sent an email, you know what this is. It's exactly what it says. It's the acknowledgement email. So I'm going to, or the subject line. So I'm going to put in something like maybe, thank you for your Bloomerang donation. First thing they're going to see. Who is this from? So this typically, you're going to want to put the from name in, probably from the same person as who owns the email address that you're sending from. So the from email, if they reply to the email, that's who it's going to go to. So in this case, if I put in my email address there, anybody who I send this email to and they reply to it, I'm going to see it. It's going to go to this email address here. So typically your from name should probably be the same. And then you're set to go. So we've got step 2 out of the way. Let's move on to next. Now we're choosing a layout. So you're going to have to design an email, right? And email designing is a little bit different than letter designing. It's laid out in blocks and cells, and you have different sort of formats we have in there for you where you can do a 1-column, 2-column, 3-column, or these 2 columns with a thin and a wide column on either the left or right side. It's really kind of a stylistic preference. If you want columns with information side by side, you want to choose one of these 4. I did, however, recently learn from someone who I would consider an expert in this field that the 1-column layout would be preferred for most people. And the reason for that is interesting. It's because most people these days view their personal emails on their phone. When you view your personal email on your phone, you don't have as much screen space, right? So when you read the email, you want the email to show as much of the email text as possible, as much of the body as possible to show up on the screen of the email. And a 1-column email would have a better likelihood of that occurring. 2-column or 3-column emails can end up getting really wide and causing issues with scrolling when reading the email on your phone. So just kind of food for thought. So to that end, I'm going to do a 1-column email. Okay, next is choose a starter design. So we have a few different designs in here, already kind of giving you a template to go on with a little bit of design flair. Obviously, a lot of these images you're going to go in and you're going to change. You'll probably change the color schematics. But they're sort of just examples of sort of a typical templated, formatted email that you're going to kind of give you a platform to jump off from, right? We hope to add to this. I would hope in the future, add some other designs, add a little bit more maybe tried and true formats and communication verbiage for clicks and things like that. You know, a lot of things I think to look towards the future as far as the types of designs we give you. So I need to choose one of these. I'm going to go with, let's go with this one. All right. So now we're finally in and we're editing. So you can see, look, as I scroll, these are all broken out into blocks. This one down at the bottom here, though, doesn't have a block. It means it can't be edited. I can change the color and the text and all of that, but I can't really do much more than that. This information, contact info, comes from your organization settings down here. In fact, if you were to try and create a new email and you had not yet entered in your organization name and address info and phone number, then it would not show up. You would not be able to get to email. You wouldn't allow you to create a new email without having the information first. It would prompt you to enter that data in there. And you might ask why. Well, the reason for that is because of spam can compliance laws. If you are sending mass email, meaning one recipient sending to multiple recipients through some sort of mass email program, we personally use SendGrid, is who actually is sending the email on your and our behalf. They require this information. It's the law. So it has to have a direct sender. So that's why that's in there. It cannot be edited only in so much as you can edit the organization name and address information. You also have to have the unsubscribe link. It has to be there. Another CAN spam compliance law. Okay? So let's move up here and let's start doing some editing. So first things first, I might say I don't like my header image. So I can get in here and I can update that. I could also, maybe I don't want it at all, I can get rid of it. So when I go into a block, I have the option to delete a block, I can move a block, and I can edit it. Or to edit it, I can just click in the block itself, like that. Okay? So maybe, and this is another thing I recently learned, which is very interesting, a lot of times it's better to have a sort of a text lead-in to the email, sort of a, hey, big headline to pique their interest rather than an image. So maybe I want to move this down here and drop it here. Or maybe if that doesn't work, we'll try again. There we go. So now I've got my email title here instead. And we're going to change the title of this. We're going to change it to thank you for something like that. So that's the first thing they see. And we might go in here and say, you know what, I don't like this green background. Let's change that. So I can go in here to edit styles. And you'll see I've got different sort of primary styles. I have a backdrop, which is this color back here. I have a background, which is this color, background of an article. And then I have this color back here, which is a separator. And it might actually be a header as well. Let's take a look. I think if we change it here, it's actually a header. So let's make it maybe some kind of teal. There we go. I don't know if that's any better. That's pretty ugly, but we'll go with it. So then let's also maybe want to change the color of this font, right? I'm going to edit styles again. And I want my text here to be, we'll go black. Maybe I want to change the text type and the pixels. Maybe I want to be a little bit bigger or smaller. Update. Oh, I changed the wrong one. Sorry, guys. We want the heading 1. There we go. See, I even forget this, what everything we have it called there. So sometimes you just kind of have to get into your edit styles and say, wait, which is which, and then go in there and change. Okay, so I've got my header. Now I want to change an image. This image doesn't mean anything to me. I want to get rid of it. So let's click on it, and let's highlight it. At this point, I could just delete it, backspace, delete, good to go. Or I could have left it highlighted and replaced it with another image. So to add an image, you want to click on the tree. When you do that, this pops up. Insert edit image, and you've got a little bit of information here. First thing first, what's the URL of the image? So if you have the URL of a hosted image somewhere, you can actually pop that right in there, and it will pull into your email. But usually what you'll want to do is go in here and browse for a previously uploaded image. We actually can store images for you. So you see I've uploaded a couple here. Well, I can go in here and choose a file and upload from my computer. So I'll go in here and I'll pull in this Bloomerang logo, store it on my computer, I'll open, and then I'll choose to upload. So now when I create another email template later, and I want to insert an image, this exact image, it's there. I don't have to go look for it. I don't have to look for a URL. I know it's already hosted here, and I can click on it and pull it in. Now, I can set my dimensions. So this is probably going to be pretty big. I might want to cut it in half. I'm going to go to like 600, 270. I can also set a border, a vertical space, and a horizontal space. I'll show you this on another image in a minute, but I'll explain what it is now. A border actually does exactly that. It puts in a border. So I can put in a numerical representation of the width of the border. And you might play with that a little bit to see. But if I put in, let's say, like a 10, on the screen it'll probably look like about a centimeter maybe. And a vertical space, and then you can also change the color of a border. So a border is like a frame for the picture. Vertical space and horizontal space are actually a little different. That's just giving you a buffer. So if you're doing any sort of text wrap, and you don't want the text to fall right on top of the edge of the image, you could put in some vertical space and horizontal space to give you that white space buffer. Okay, so let's not do anything for this yet. Let's just go ahead and click Insert. All right, there's my image. At this point, too, I can highlight it and make it smaller, make it wider if I want to. But I think that's going to be pretty good. Maybe I'll shrink it up just a little bit. Click Update. All right, so there I've got my image. You see I've got a little bit of white space here, so I might actually move it out just a little bit more. Close enough. Okay, so I've got my header image in there. Now I might want to then actually start typing out a message. So this is an acknowledgement email, remember? So I'm going to acknowledge them for their donation. Now, if you've done acknowledgement letters, it's very similar to that. It's very similar to also taking an even further step forward, acknowledgement, or not acknowledgement, but just regular reporting. Remember, when you create a letter or email and you're putting in merge values, so you're pulling in data from a transaction or from a constituent body of an email or a letter, it's kind of like creating a report, but in a different format. And a report in Bloomerang is just like kind of like setting up an Excel spreadsheet. Columns are the information that you're seeing about something, and the rows are either the individual transactions or the individual constituents that you're seeing that information for. So the same kind of goes with email. We're going to start typing a message. So we're going to say something like, thank you for your recent donation of. Leave a blank, and now I want to put in the amount. I can go in here. Now there's a couple different options I can do for an amount. But probably would be good to have a nice complex reporting session, one of these in the future, where I can get into a little bit more of this. But let's talk about what amount means as a transaction field. I think this is very important, and I've seen this question come up quite often with email acknowledgments and letter acknowledgments, and even in reporting. The amount is just that. Think about the different types of transactions you have in Bloomerang. You have donations, you have pledges, you have payments on pledges, you have recurring donations, and you have recurring donation payments. Now, only 3 of those things actually have to do with money going into your bank account. And those 3 things are donations, payments on pledges, and recurring donation payments. Pledges and recurring donation which I want to add the word schedule to that because that's what it is. It's a recurring donation schedule. They both have amounts, but it doesn't correspond to actual money in the bank. So if you use the amount field here, you have to be cognizant of the fact that you need to filter out the transactions that you don't want to acknowledge people for. Things like soft credits even, right? Soft credits, pledges, and your recurring donations schedules. Sometimes it makes a little bit more sense and maybe more intuitive to use revenue. When you use revenue, even if you accidentally get a recurring donation schedule or a pledge or a soft credit in there, it won't show an amount because those don't have revenue amounts. They're not actual money. Still, though, it will probably show up as a $0 or something like that, or it probably just won't come in at all. So it's still a good idea to always be cognizant of your filters. But we'll use revenue. And we'll keep going. So thank you for your recent donation to the blank, to the fund. And we're going to slide one in here for fund as well. I'm going to look down here for fund. There we are. Okay. So if it's the unrestricted fund and you named your fund unrestricted, it will come in as to the unrestricted fund, right? Now, another thing to keep in mind with transaction emails, and this is a really big one. If you remember when you're doing let me rephrase. When you're doing an acknowledgement letter and you want to acknowledge based on multiple transactions, you have another little option here. You've got a little grid that you can choose to put the table into the body of the letter, and you can list the transactions for the person. So it creates one email or one letter per constituent or one letter per household, right? Well, email doesn't have that little table. It also doesn't have a one letter per transaction option. It's always one letter per constituent or household. The reason for that is because if you wanted to send one letter per transaction and you're in your filters, you had 10 transactions for John Smith, he'd get 10 emails. And that's really bad spamming. It's not appreciated by anyone. So what will happen is if the people I send to have more than one transaction in my filters, it will total. So revenue, let's say that John Smith had two $10 donations, and I'm thanking all my constituents for all their donations over the past 2 months that he gives every month. Instead of seeing two $10 transactions, I'm going to see that totaled up. Revenue will total 10 plus 10, and it will show 20. Okay? So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you're going to do email acknowledgments and you want to make sure you're kind of sending one per transaction, you want to do them often. You don't want to get backed up, because then you have to start thinking about things like latest transaction date and latest transaction amount, right? So it's okay, maybe you want to thank him for his two most recent transactions, but you won't have a way to give him the dates of both of those transactions. You only have a way to give them the date of their latest one, because date itself won't know exactly which one to pull from. It's going to say, well, wait, there's two. Which date do I pull? Just like in reports, it's kind of like you're collapsing groups, you're collapsing transactions all into one line to see totals. It's not going to know what date to pull. So you can put in a date if you're confident that this is a one per transaction situation. Doing these daily or doing these weekly. Otherwise, that date is going to be a little bit meaningless. So just keep that in mind. So we've got a basic message here. Thank you for your recent donation of $10 to the unrestricted fund on 1/29/2014. Okay? Let's click update here. And that's what you'll see there. Okay? So then next, let's talk about some tips and tricks as far as what you can embed besides images, besides these data merge fields. Now you can go in and you can put, let's say, a video. Let's say we want something like, check out our latest video. And go in here, wipe out that text, and I'm going to insert YouTube video. All you need is a YouTube video URL. So I'm going to go out here to this one that I have. Just copy that. Plug it in here. Click insert, and it broke. There we go. So now I've got it in here. I can make it smaller and click update. Now, a word to the wise here. This does not play in the body of the email. It's a very rare occurrence that you see that. What it does do is it'll pull a screenshot from the video that you upload, from the video that you embed, and then when they click on this, it's going to take them to YouTube to play the video. Okay? Just to let you know what happens as far as your recipient's experience there. Now, another thing you might consider doing are anchors. You can do something like this. You could say, I want to maybe have a table of contents somewhere. And in that table of contents, you might have things like, oh, let's go down here. Let's say, let's just put in a few things like, I mean, I can even do this as a bulleted list if I wanted to. Maybe I'll put in something like jump to a section. And like I said, this is not a design meeting, this is a functional meeting. I'm not a designer. That's why you're seeing teal. I am not the guy to go to tell you what your email should look like.
I kind of like the teal, Jason. That looks too bad.
You like the teal? The black on teal? It's all the rage. All right, so jump to a section. So let's say you've got a really long email, right? You've got a lot of content. I don't recommend going too overboard with content because, like I said before, people are reading this on their phones a lot of times. It's unlikely that they're going to scroll through and read these long articles in your email. You know, keep it to the point. And if you have a long article, another nice thing, and I think Melissa mentioned this in her session that she did a couple months ago, maybe start the article with a summary and then provide a link that they can click on to take you to the hosted article somewhere else. And that's a cool thing too, because when you do that, and we'll see this in a little bit, we track the links they click on. So you can see what messaging is more effective and what sort of terminology is driving people to click. And when they click on a link and they go to your website, that's just a great opportunity there to give them more messaging and have them actually explore your website and maybe give a donation, right? So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but let's do kind of a really ugly table of contents. I'm going to do a bulleted table of contents. I'm going to say jump to a section, and I'm going to call the first one thank you message. Why you would actually do that in particular, I don't know, it's kind of silly, but we're going to do it anyway. Information video. Then we might do a really important article. Okay, so 3 things. And then we might just have one for contact info and maybe donation now. All right. So a few things right off the bat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to create some hyperlinks. I'm going to highlight that right there, and I'm going to go up here to this chain link, click on it, and I'm going to put in the URL for my donation page, right? I'm just going to put in Bloomerang's website here, but I'm going to put in the link URL. I'm going to click to insert. It's going to ask me if I want to add the HTTP prefix. Yes, I do. And click OK, and then click insert. All right, now that's a link to the Bloomerang website. Now, a few things I want to anchor to. So I'm going to save this for now, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to create some anchors. So what an anchor does is it's a way to create a place in your email that you can link to so that when they click, it pulls them down to that portion of the email. I'm sure you've seen it in emails that you've received before. You get a place that you can click to see a specific message, specific article, and it will move you down the page automatically without having to scroll and find it. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go into this block here, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to put in an anchor. I'm going to name the anchor. I'm going to name it thank you message. Click insert. Okay. Try again. I think it has to all be one string. Let's try that. Yes, there we go. Okay, so I've got my anchor. What I see here is like hashtag. It's hashtag thank you. That's very important because that's going to be what we use to link to that anchor. All right? So hashtag thank you. Let's click here, update. Now let's go up here, highlight. Let's make this a link. My link URL now is going to be hashtag thank you. Now, let's update. Let's go and check out our latest video. Let's put an anchor in here as well. Let's name this one video. Update. Hashtag video. Okay, update. I think that's probably good enough for now. You get the point there. So I could say, put another article down here, put a bunch of articles in, and just create little jumps to each one of those. I can also go in here to edit styles, and I should be able to change the link colors. I want to make those a little bigger maybe. There we go. So I'm going to make it even uglier. All right, so now we've got our, I think it just wiped out my anchors though. Did it? Sure did. No, it didn't. Okay, that should be good. All right, so we've got our links. We've got our donate now. That's still a link. Looks good. Okay. All right. Let's see. What else do we want to edit? I think we're good for now. We can also add a block. So if I did want to add another article down there, I can go in here and add a block. So you see you can put in banner image, title, article, text, image separator. So I can put like little separators in between each area. One thing I should probably show you is text wrapping. Let's add a section. Let's add a text section right down here. It's a free, all right, so let's say maybe we want to please read. All right, so let's say I want to put an image in here. Let's go over here and find the place where you want the image to be. You probably want it to be some sort of wrap, like this will probably want to be some sort of left align or right align, depending where you want to put the image. Probably left align will be easier. Say, all right, where do I kind of want this image to go? Let's just plug it in a place in the middle. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to look for an image. Let's upload a new one. Let's upload me in Iceland. How about that? I'll brag a little bit. All right, let's definitely change the size of this guy. Let's go 500, 270. And let's not mess with any of this yet. I don't want to show you that. All right, so there we go. There's me in Iceland. I'm going to move this to be aligned to the right. And so now you can see I've got some text wrap going on here, right? It looks a little weird because the image is pretty big and I don't have a whole lot of text information, but you definitely want to add your text first and insert your image after. That way you can get the appropriate text wrapping, okay? Now I can you see how it bumps right up on it, right there? I can go in here, I can do a couple things to alleviate that. I can go in and edit, or highlight this and edit the image and put in a border. So I'm going to put in something like this. So you see how it puts in a border. I can change the color of the border too. That's in your edit styles as well. Or if I don't like the border and I want to frame it, I can just go in here and put in a vertical space and a horizontal space. Does that work? Okay, so now I've got a little bit of buffer, right? Now, you're going to want to play with that a little bit to get it the way it wants, especially if you have a lot of text. You're probably going to want to mess with your image size to see where the text falls and everything. But if you have a whole block of text and you're plugging this sucker into just the middle of it somewhere, you probably won't have a whole lot of problem because it's going to wrap really nicely. All right, so we got that down there. This is Gullfoss. It is about an hour drive outside of Reykjavik in Iceland. And it's a huge waterfall. It's really awesome. All right, so I think we're about ready to send. Let's look and see. We've got our added blocks. We've edited our styles. We haven't filtered yet. We have to do that. If we need to change any of the details, we can go in there and do that at this time. I think we're pretty close, though. So we're going to just go ahead and chuck this out there. And first thing we need to do, though, it's a daily thank you letter, right? We need to filter. So right now, it's going to pull every single transaction in my database. And it's going to pull, for every transaction in my database, it's going to pull the revenue amount, the fund, and the date, right? So that's definitely not what I want. I don't want to send this based on every single thank you letter in my database. So I need to go in here. I need to include transactions where, and I need to filter. If you filtered a letter, if you filtered a report, it's the same, exact same thing. So I'm going to go in here, include transactions where, and I'm going to look for date is today. Now, you probably want to take it one step further. It's not necessarily enough to go date is any day from today, because that's still going to pull in soft credits. It's still going to pull in pledges, recurring donation schedules. Not really probably what you want. If you're sending this based on just actual giving, people have given you money, then I would recommend, and this applies too towards your letters and your reporting, if you want to see just the money, click an and in there, and go in here and look for revenue, and say at least a cent. So now what you're going to do is it's only going to pull transactions from today that are at least a cent or more, that are revenue amounts of at least a cent or more. Now revenue equals the exact same thing as this. So if I click and, just to look at the filter, if I were to do transaction type, it's donations, payments, and recurring donation payments. So it would be the exact same thing as clicking transaction type and doing this, right? Just a little bit easier to do it as revenue. Now notice here, very important message. This means that no one that's opted out of all mass email will receive your email. Pretty obvious, right? And anyone unsubscribed from acknowledgement. So what that means is if they've unsubscribed from something else, if they've specifically opted in when they click the opt-out link to a specific type of email on your subscription list, and it wasn't acknowledgement, they're not going to get it because I tagged this one with acknowledgement. So only people who have not opted out of anything and those people who have who've opted in specifically to acknowledgement on their subscription list will receive this email. So this is a moment where if you go and you run your email, you get your preview, and you're like, wait a minute, why are all these people missing? It's probably some sort of snafu with your sublists, okay? The first thing to check. Then I would check your filters. All right, back to our filters. So I like that. That should give me, if I did my calculations earlier today in my prep, I should have 2 transactions. So I'm going to, for now, I'm not going to save yet. I want to do one last thing. I want to, for my own sanity, take a look at just how ugly this email is going to look in my email when I receive it. So I'm going to run a test. Okay? It should come up with my user's email address, but I can change that and I can send it to other people. This is a really good idea because email is weird. The way things are edited, the way things are built in our email program could be read differently in other email providers. It might look slightly different in Outlook than it looks in Gmail, than it looks in Hotmail. There's not really much that can be done about that. It's kind of hard to come up with a universal way for all of these email recipients to read your code. But there might be something really, really off that looks really bad in one of those in rare occurrences that you'll want to know about ahead of time. And that will give you an option to send it to different people with different email providers to take a look and say, yeah, okay, we're looking pretty good. So I'm just going to send it to myself. I'm going to click send. And I should, in just a moment, receive the email. There it is. So I've got this test email, right? If I click in here, I see it. This is a test email. I can display my images. It is super ugly. So I can start testing links too. So I can make sure that thank you message, it's going to take me down to my thank you message. Donate now should take me out to Bloomerang. It may take a minute to load. My internet connection is a little slow on wireless. So there you go. It's starting to load the website. So there you see, I've got my hyperlinks, my anchors. It's taking me down. If I click here, it should take me out to YouTube. Yep, that's pretty nifty. That's new. That's a Chrome thing, I guess. So that's cool. Down here, I've got my unsubscribe from future mailings and any sort of other hyperlinks you can click on. All right, so my test, I like it. It's as ugly as I expected it to be, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to run it. Let's close some windows. All right, so we've run our test, we've created our email, we're ready to go. What do we do? Well, we have 2 options. We can save and we can go back to email home and say, well, I'm going to send it later. Maybe it's noon and I just want to send it at the end of the day, whatever you want to do. Or I can send it now. Let's send it. All right, so it's ready to preview. Let's click to preview. There we go. Just as I suspected, I have 2 emails to send. I don't have any opt-outs to skip. That's good news. It will show you your recipients. So you've got your email recipient list here. It's going to Peter Parker and his boss, John Jonah Jameson. It's showing me also transaction type, so a little bit of information since it's transaction-based, right? It's going to show me a little bit of that info too. So I've got the date and the amount and the transaction type. Here's a sample email again, sort of your last chance to say, whoa, 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 I don't like this, it's the wrong email or something. Make changes if you need to. If there were opt-outs to skip, it would tell you how many. And now we're going to send. Yes, I'm absolutely sure. All right. So it's been scheduled for delivery. That means that it basically, if this is a really big email that you're sending out, maybe you're sending it to a few hundred or 1,000 people, whatever, it's not going to send those all out at once. It's going to send it out in sort of small batches, or as this says, I think, smaller bursts. So it could take a few minutes to an hour for everyone to receive the email, and maybe even a little bit longer depending on the size of the audience, or the size of the amount of people you're sending to. But for something like this, I should have already received it. And yeah, I have. So cool thing that happens. Mass email confirmation. So, hi, Jason Oliver. your mass email job has been scheduled for delivery. So that should happen like immediately to let you know that, yes, you were successful in sending. It's going to give you a little bit of information. And then the actual email itself, we got it. It looks like this. Beautiful. I'm going to click on some things. I'm going to click Donate Now. I'm going to click, yeah, that's probably the most important one. Okay. So now we get some cool stuff. Let's go back to our email dashboard. So we've got our daily thank you email here. If I go back in here, I now have tracking. So tracking is going to show you a little bit of information about what's going on. So if you take a look, you see the date and time it went out, how many total recipients, what were the most clicked links. So it's going to start giving you a count of how many people clicked on what, the percent of people that have opened, the percent of people who have clicked on a link. So really interesting stuff there. Now, some of you have asked, and will probably ask, can we make all this clickable? Can I see who the total recipients were from here? Can I see who opened? Can I see who clicked a link? From here, yeah, probably at some point, but you can create reports based on this because all this stuff gets stored in an interaction, okay? So that's a really nice thing. You can go in and you create a report, and it would have to be an interaction list. Right? One of these guys. And you could filter it by any number of things. So maybe I'll call it my daily TY open list. Save and customize. So I can go in here and I can add stuff like, did they opt out or not? So mass email unsubscribe. Did they do that? I can go in here and I can see, did they open it? And I can go in here, I can see what they clicked on. All right? I'll filter, and I'm just going to do, to make this fast and easy, I'm going to go in here and just do a interaction is today. Updates, and I'm also going to do channel is email. Or mass email, more specifically. Okay, I'll pull any interaction created today with channel of mass email, and that was made today. So let's save and run the screen. I should see 2, right? Because we just sent 2 out. But I don't because I sent some tests earlier. Ha ha ha. But that's okay. So you'll see Peter Parker. That's the one that has my email address on it. I clicked on it. So it says, did I open it or not? The other one I sent out for that other transaction is a no. So I haven't opened that one yet. I can go in here, I can click on this. I can see what links I clicked on. I can click on this. And it'll take me in here, look at this. It does just the same thing that letters do. It acknowledges the transaction. And it tells you what transaction it acknowledged. So I can go in here, and it'll take me back to the transaction. So I can see that now TS has been acknowledged, and this is the interaction that was used to acknowledge it. So pretty, kind of the same thing that a thank you letter would do. Okay, so let's go back to my emails. And just look at that tracking one more time because I was in there pretty fast. Okay, so tracking. So as they unsubscribe, you'll be able to see them unsubscribe, see that number go up. A couple things I want to just put off at the pass as far as questions are probably concerned. What happens if the email doesn't reach the recipient? What happens if it bounces back? Do we track any of that info? The answer is yes and no. Like I said earlier, we use SendGrid. That's who we use to actually physically send the emails out. They do track all of that stuff. We just haven't written it into the interface, user interface, to see those results. Is that something we'll do in the future? I can't say for sure. Not my area to say for sure. Do I think we probably will? Yeah, I think probably. That way you can start seeing some actual returns. Get some idea of how successful, how many people it's reaching and aren't clicking on it, things like that. But whoever you put in as your recipient, your reply email address, they'll receive the bounce backs. So they're going to start probably getting some, undeliverable messages and that thing in their email inbox. So they might be prepared for that. They will receive any bounce back that happens. And that can kind of maybe be your cue to do a little bit of cleanup on some of those email addresses too in your database. Maybe reach out to some of those people in other ways to maybe update their email or otherwise. Okay, so that's a lot of information, and I think went a lot longer than I intended to. I didn't leave a whole lot of time for questions, but I can take some questions if you have any, Stephen.
Yeah, we got a few in here, and I've been answering a couple, and actually you answered some without even knowing it. But there are a few in here that I think you could answer pretty easily. I'll just kind of start here at the top of the list. We've got a question here from Jamie. Jamie's wondering, if a contact has multiple emails, will the contact only be emailed to the primary email, or will they get an email to all the addresses in the system?
Jamie, yes, that is a great question. Thank you for asking. They will only receive an email to the primary email address. Now, this is something that a few of you have suggested that we maybe change that policy. We aren't really sure what direction we're going to go with that. We've had some compelling cases for Annex giving you the ability to do that. It really depends on sort of how spammy that actually is. But, with things like couples, maybe joint accounts, it might be something we do need to look at a little closer, because if you want to send to all the emails on an address and the account is for John and Mary Smith instead of John Smith or Mary Smith, I can see a reason for wanting to send out to multiple emails per account. So for now, to answer your question, no, it only sends to the primary, but maybe that will change.
Is that the same for an organization if there are multiple emails under one organization?
Yes. I mean, it doesn't matter. If it's an account, a constituent account, okay, and their profile has multiple email addresses, organization or individual, it will only send to whichever one is primary. Okay,
cool. Hey, Jason, we had a couple of people ask the same question, and it had to do with the image editor in the email builder.
Yeah.
When you drag that image to either enlarge it or make it smaller, does it stay in proportion if you grab it on the corner and kind of drag it there, or how does that work?
Yes, it does stay in proportion. It's in so much as, you can drag it out of proportion, but right. No, it doesn't constrain the proportion. So probably, I guess what I mean is it doesn't probably do it, because I could go in here and let's just open up this one here. And
I think some folks were having trouble and were dragging it out of proportion when they didn't.
I could make this look wicked ugly. I could go down here, and that's not really in proportion anymore, right? It's really squished. Yeah. So one thing I do want to mention, we use a third party for this editor, and there is a new version of this editor that we may be upgrading to too soon. And I believe when you do that, you can go in here and put in like a dimension size, and it will constrain the proportion. So you don't have to do that sort of proportional math on the other side. So look for that to change. Is another thing I think a lot of people have suggested. Hey, why can't we constrain proportions? Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably a really good recommendation. And the new version of this editor does allow it. So I don't think that's too far away.
Okay, great. So that's coming soon.
Right.
Looks like we had one person in the chat say that if you hold down the Shift key when you drag the little bubbles in the corner or at the top, it'll stay in proportion.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's not something I've tried personally. Maybe you can look at that now, Jason. Yeah.
So if I hold Shift here.
Yeah. There you go.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Leah. Thanks for that.
Oh, look at that. That's cool. And then I could go in here and I could change my alignment. Oh, nifty. Hey, good question. Good looking out there.
Good job, Leah. We'll send you some cookies for that one. That was awesome. Well, cool. We just got a couple other ones.
Okay.
Jason, is there a spell check function on the email editor there?
Oh no, I wish. It's a weird thing because it's like I said, this editor is sort of exists in its own planet, and it doesn't even allow for your browser spell check to work. So I want to see that change too. I feel your pain on that, and I will definitely do, as I always do, advocate on your behalf for that. So hopefully soon, but I can't make any promises on any timeline, as always. Sorry.
And can emails be exported as PDFs in case folks wanted to do something else with them?
That's another interesting one that we've had a suggestion on. I think a lot of people like to send an email out and then host it, so that they can save it on their website or host it somewhere, link out to it, right, as a sort of an archive. We've looked at doing that, possibly creating sort of an archive for your mass emails, so that you could do exactly that. We'll host it for you and link to an old email if you wanted to do that. For now, what kind of workaround on that is would be, or save as PDF too. Basically, if you could host it, you could probably download it and print it. But what I kind of recommend people do is, I think that the reason they want that is so, like I said, to create an archive. What I recommend you do is when you send the email out, make sure you send it to yourself too. And then when you're in the email, let's see if I remember how to do this. Nope, wrong one. I should be able to inspect element or view page source here. So I can go in here and I can actually grab the HTML if it loads. There we go. So you can kind of grab the HTML, put this out on your website, and it will convert it back into the visual HTML, the visual version. So that's one sort of workaround to do. It's not exactly the cleanest thing in the world, but that's definitely something that we've got some suggestions on, and I think it's a pretty reasonable request.
Definitely. Well, since it's a little after 5, why don't we do one more question, and then if we didn't happen to get to your question, definitely email us. I'm sure anyone in support and probably Jason will be willing to answer some more email questions. But Jason, a couple people did ask if you can schedule emails to be sent at a later date and time. Is that functionality?
Broken record. But no, not yet. I really hope so. I think it would be a great idea, especially for things like a daily thank you letter email where you set your filters up. You never really have to look at it. It'd be kind of a neat thing. You have a big publicity event coming up, and you got your email set up in advance, and you're not going to be at a computer when you want it to be sent out, but you want to schedule to do so. I totally get wanting that. I think, like most things along those lines, and a lot of suggestions that we've had, I think it's something that you'll see in the future. But just at the moment, there's just so much other stuff we're developing. It's not really in the near future.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Hey, we've got one more question, and it's the only one left, so we might as well answer it if you're up for it, Jason.
Yeah, that's okay.
Janelle here was wondering if an email bounces, will it show up in the constituents profile that the email isn't good anymore? Will it alert you somehow?
No, you'll get the bounce back email. So you will get the sender will get a bounce back email, but it won't really do anything.
Okay.
So you'll be responsible for having to go in and either remove the email address or put in a note or something to that effect. Like I said, I definitely expect to see more of that tracking kind of stuff occur, and maybe it's something that will get tracked on the interaction, just like if they opened it or not. Right. But right, and it is something that we do have the ability to pull down from SendGrid if it was received or not. But it's like I said, it's not available in the UI yet.
Okay, cool. Well, great. I think we did get to all the questions, but if we missed you or if there's something pressing, feel free to email me or Jason. We'll answer your questions for sure. And hopefully you got something out of this webinar, Jason. That was a really excellent deep dive into the tool. Thanks for spending an hour with us.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you guys.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions for further webinars, I think there was 1 or 2 in the chat room. Feel free to let us know if there's something that you'd like us to dive deep into, specific functionality or something like that. Please let us know. We want these webinars to be for you. We want them to be resources for you. So don't hesitate to let us know what you think, what you'd like to see, what you'd like to see improved. You won't hurt our feelings, I promise. So Jason, we'll call it a day there. I have been recording this webinar, so I will be sending out the video a little later on, probably tomorrow. So if you'd like to rewatch it, or if you had to, if you joined late and wanted to see the beginning, you'll be able to watch it there. So yeah, thanks again, Jason, and thanks to all of you who joined us for an hour. Have a safe ride home and a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you, everyone.